You can't live your life looking for compliments on Twitter, because it's not a barometer of society. It's really not.
So I want to talk about your Twitter account, because like I say, I remember when you had how many followers? Like a couple of thousand?
Do you remember when I got the blue tick and I had like, we were making a joke of, is it a world record for a blue tick with the least amount of followers?
Yeah. And we were just finding these local reporters from like the Dublin Express who've got less than you and be like, hey, Laura, found some bloke called Niall who's got 21 followers, but he's got a blue tick.
It was so good, wasn't it? Oh my God. It was so funny. And Smithy had loads.
Yeah.
And I always remember him hammering me because he had like 100,000 and I had like 2,000 or something. It was ridiculous.
Well, now you've got 400,000 followers.
It's mad, isn't it? What happened there?
Well, I reckon it's because your tone is so good. I think you do Twitter better than most people because you speak to people as if they're your mates. And I think you do that really, really well. Do you have a strategy? I know you wouldn't necessarily think of it that deep, but do you have a way in which you try and grow your Twitter account, or is it just completely organic?
Do you know what I don't like doing? If that's a strategy, I don't like flooding. So I'm actually quite selective about what I tweet. So what I actually tweet out. Now that when you reply to people, it just goes on like a separate page. I feel better about that. But I try not to flood because I get annoyed with people. And I'm not always on Twitter anymore as well. I have to kind of take the rough with the smooth with Twitter a little bit. So I remember always wanting it to be authentic. And that was when I started getting more followers. I was like, I didn't really know what the voice should be, what the tone should be at the beginning. And again, in the same way that I sort of found presenting, I think working on Soccer AM Online as well and kind of engaging with people, I really enjoyed that. And, you know, we used to go outside stadiums, didn't we, in the freezing cold and spend our evenings talking to fans and taking the mick out of fans, you know, and that was how I liked doing it. And that felt authentic to me. So then it just became my voice on Twitter. And then I did notice the more prominent I got, or the more known I became in the world of football and Twitter and social media and stuff like that, with more followers comes more scrutiny, and with more scrutiny comes more abuse. And my way of handling that at the time was kind of, sometimes I'd react angrily, and I realized that doesn't work. And then sometimes I'd spin it and make a joke out of it. And that became a thing for a while, you know. It just became like, just sort of muggy replies became something that I just enjoyed doing. And then, I don't know, that when it becomes more and more and more following, you feel a bit more of a responsibility not to be like that. So now I've toned it down a little bit, but yeah, I'll always try and be authentic on it, because it's kind of, I think it's quite transparent when you're not.
Yeah.
And obviously, like, stuff happens, you know, when you get more followers, you have people that are like, do you want to work with us? And do you want to do this? And a lot of the time I'm like, no, I don't really want to, because I cringe when I see other people doing it. But then other times I'm like, it's part of my job. So, you know, if it's something that I do believe in, I won't do it if I don't really believe in it. You know, if it's a product that I think I wouldn't use it, I would say no to it. There was one recently, Carling, funnily enough, who we'd worked with before. Their campaign was about supporting your local, and I feel quite strongly about that. So I was like, this is something genuine that I would like to get on board with. So I did that.
Yeah, nice. You mentioned it there about the Twitter replies, because I remember the days where you would reply to absolutely everyone, and we'd be like,
we were encouraged to, weren't we? We were like, you know, speak to people, and I was like, great, I love it. And I literally did, didn't I? Because I got 5 tweets a week. Like, here's a paragraph in reply, and how's your mother?
Yeah, maybe you're a bit more grateful back then. But I suppose you can't do that anymore. You must have to ignore some people.
Yeah, and I still find it rude, genuinely. So I do find it rude. What I find with the platform that I have now, I'm really lucky actually, especially with TalkSport, is they'll let me talk about anything, which I'm not sure if they know that's the dangers of that yet. But they will literally be like, if you want to discuss something, you can. And I obviously will always do it responsibly, but we have had big conversations then before in the time I took over about COVID, about Black Lives Matter, about mental health, racism, homophobia. You know, we've covered so much on that show. And I understand what happens with those clips. They get clipped up and they get put out on social media and they generate debate. And you are never going to keep everybody happy. And they can generate. That was my dog. Sorry. Wow. Are you all right? You just look. Hello.
So cute.
I got to sleep. That was really unbecoming of her, wasn't it? Yeah, you especially when you are discussing something as sensitive as Black Lives Matter, for example, or a mental health issue or suicide or something like that. It can get really deep, and people can really people react heavily to that kind of thing. So those replies can be, you know, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of replies, and you're never going to get through them all. And I still, at the back of my mind, when people say, you know, especially mental health, this is how I'm feeling, and I found, here's my example of something. I would love to get through all those replies so I can reply to those people. But what happens is, as you filter through those replies, you see some really nasty ones, and they're the ones that kind of go, ooh, and they like stick in your chest, and you think, oh, and actually you don't have the capacity to deal with that. So that's why I have to kind of go, here's what we talked about, it's out there, and I shut the door, and sometimes I delete the app and I ignore it. Yeah, it's just, sometimes it's just too much.
Well, you do reply to a lot more people than most people, and it's really sweet. I went through your tweets and replies recently, and it's just nice to see you thanking people and like genuinely engaging, because a lot of presenters and broadcasters must just feel completely unreachable for fans and listeners. But I kind of feel like if I'm an average Joe and I tweet you saying, oh, that really touched me what you said about mental health, I'm quite likely to get a nice reply, which is nice.
Yeah. It's funny actually, because they you remember people as well. So there are people on Twitter that I recognize because they've been interacting with me since I got Twitter. I think I've had it for about 10 years now. I remember when I set it up at the World Darts Championships with my friend Lisa. I was like, so what is this? She was like, just tweet stuff. And someone tweeted me the other day, actually, with my first tweet, really randomly. They went, I went back through your tweets, which I was like, oh, why have you done that? And it was like, this was your first tweet. And I think it was Matt Jarvis or it was an NFL player, fantasy football, that got me 1 point that week. And I was like, cheers, Matt. And that was my first tweet. And I remember being like, God, how long ago was that? I don't think, it kind of been 10 years ago. Anyway, it was a long time ago. But yeah, I still remember people that were there from the beginning. And I like it. It's a community, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think people like you and I that spent so much of our time and still do focus on social media and creating jobs out of it, and infiltrating that community of YouTubers and figuring out what makes them tick and engaging in it. It sort of sticks with me, all of that. But it's a place that I like, which is why when it can be spiky, it kind of hurts a little bit, because it's kind of like, well, that's always been a realm that I'm comfortable in and I really enjoy. So when you are in sort of deep water that you feel like, oh, I don't know how to deal with this, and you have to separate yourself, it's a strange feeling. It's like an alien feeling, really.
Yeah, I wanted to mention that, really, the kind of trolls. Obviously social media has its positives, but a lot of it is negatives, kind of people hiding behind avatars and tweeting some really nasty things. Do these tweets get to you, or are you able to build up a wall, I suppose?
I always think it depends what sort of mood I'm in. So if I'm tired, then they can get to me. You know, when you're really like, when you're sleepy, or when you've worked hard, or you've been traveling a lot, or also like when you know that you've not been at the top of your game, which happens a lot, because, you know, like when I think about how much I broadcast 4 hours a day from 6 a.m. 3 times a week. Then I'll do a podcast, then I'll do a Premier League interview, then I will do a game on Sunday, and then I might do some odd jobs around. So sometimes I feel like I'm broadcasting more than I'm not broadcasting. And inevitably, when you're on air doing anything for that amount of time, you'll make a mistake. And the problem with social media is that you cannot ever get away from that mistake. And you are human, you know, just in the way that everybody makes a mistake. You know, you could be walking down the street and trip over. If you do the equivalent of that in your job, if you mispronounce a name, or your words don't come out properly, or you just make a mistake and we forget something, it becomes like, oh my God, like, what's she doing? Get her out. Like, she shouldn't be in football anyway. And it's like, you know, those kind of things, they do get to you. You do build up a kind of a thicker skin about it. You do. There's no doubt. Like at the beginning, you know, when we used to work on Soccer AM, I'd be like, I wonder what people are saying about me. I wonder if it's good. Is it good? And you do like put your name in Twitter and search. I have not done that since I think that year. I would never search my name. I don't want to see what people are saying about me, because I actually I trust in the people that give me the jobs. And inevitably, I've kind of thought about it in a way that most people use social media to vent and say negative things. They don't usually go out the way to say positive things. So you can't live your life looking for compliments on Twitter, because it's not a barometer of society. It's really not. It's not representative of society. It's representative of a world where people are looking to vent. So you have to kind of, as much as you can, remove yourself from it.